180 miles an hour around the outside of the 130R corner. I've never seen anything like it.
This wasn't simply one of the gutsiest, seat-of-the-pants overtaking manoeuvres in F1 history, it was also one of the most symbolic. Fernando Alonso, the rising star of Grand Prix racing, passing Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, whose gleaming championship crown he was about to claim, at Suzuka's most revered and feared corner. Passes like this, at 320 kilometers an hour around the outside, simply weren't supposed to happen at 130R. Asphalt runoff or not, special doesn't even begin to describe it.
It was much quick on the straight. He closed me the door in the inside, going to 130R. I was on the outside, flat out and really risky, but as I said before, it was nothing to lose today.
No power, no power.
Fernando Alonso's last years in Formula One were full of frustration and struggle against uncompetitive machinery, but also proved him to be a warrior and a driver who never gave up. The 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix began with the McLaren driver setting his sights on a rare points finish. But his hopes were crushed just a few seconds into the race when he was caught in a collision that punctured both his right-hand tyres. By the time he reached turn 15, they were down to the wheel rims.
Unbelievable. You take care in corner 1, corner 2 and they crash into you. Stupid.
The 36-year-old dragged his car back to the pits in an unbelievable exercise of tenacity and driving skill, narrowly avoiding running into the wall on entry, but suffering extensive damage in the process. After checking the car was structurally safe, the team sent Alonso back out with new tyres and front wing. He'd lost 20 points of downforce, equivalent to half a second a lap. But despite major damage to his car's floor, and thanks to a safety car bunching the field back up, he skillfully fought his way back through the field to finish an incredible 7th.
Seguramente la mejor carrera que he hecho en mucho tiempo, o la mejor carrera de mi vida.
To arrive at your home race as the reigning world champion will always be memorable. And the roaring grandstands worked their magic because that afternoon in Barcelona, Spain's first Formula One world champion took the victory in dominant fashion with a peerless lights-to-flag win to increase his championship lead over Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, fantastic. I finished in front of everybody here, in front of my people, my supporters. I think it was the best feeling so far, I think, in a Formula One car.
The win was Alonso's 12th consecutive podium finish, and he would give his fans much more to celebrate as he won his second world championship at the end of the season. Tension was high in the build-up to the 2010 Singapore Grand Prix. The championship lead at this point of the season could have been taken by any one of 5 drivers: Mark Webber, Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, Sebastian Vettel and Alonso. The intensity of the fight between Alonso and Sebastian Vettel was never more obvious than at the start, with Alonso forcefully countering Vettel's getaway.
Alonso leads. Back comes Hamilton though, into the first corner.
Vettel had a slight pace advantage in his Red Bull, but although he put Alonso under relentless pressure in the closing laps, the Ferrari driver's focus never faltered. The young German did his utmost to induce an error from Alonso, but the Spaniard used every inch of road to hold on and crossed the line to win by a margin of just 0.293 seconds. Still the closest finish in Singapore to date.
We did it. Grande, grande. Super guys, thank you very much. Siete migliori ragazzi. Vai! Woo!
Alonso had won from pole, led every lap and set the fastest lap. His only Grand Chelem in Formula One, and a 25th victory that put him level with legends Niki Lauda and Jim Clark. Alonso arrived in Hungary in 2003 already as F1's youngest pole sitter and podium finisher, but he would leave having recorded another milestone. Starting from pole once again, the then 22-year-old raced into the lead with Kimi Räikkönen doing his best to stay in touch. With 10 laps to go, Alonso asserted his dominance by lapping the reigning world champion Michael Schumacher. And as the checkered flag fell, he was 17 seconds clear.
And Fernando Alonso wins his first Grand Prix, and he becomes the youngest man ever to win a Formula One Grand Prix.
Eclipsing a record set by Troy Ruttman at Indianapolis in 1952 as the youngest winner of a round of the Formula One World Championship at the time. The 2007 European Grand Prix was a race riddled with spins, stranded cars, and heated disputes, and one Fernando Alonso excellently mastered. The race began and ended with rain falling, a heavy downpour forcing the race to be stopped early on after multiple crashes. Upon the restart, the race was a battle fought with Felipe Massa and Alonso, with the Brazilian holding the advantage. The Ferrari was faster than the McLaren in the drying conditions at the Nürburgring, but with 8 laps to go, the rain fell again, and Alonso began to reel him in. He was decisively quicker than Massa and tried to pass the Ferrari at every corner. Finally, on lap 56, he got around the outside, seizing the inside for the following corner and toughing it out as they banged wheels in a perfectly judged example of controlled aggression. He won, and his post-race quarrel with Massa was a byproduct of racing adrenaline. What we'd witnessed was Alonso's mastery and pure racing.
We touched each other 2 times, and I apologized to him maybe because I was so stressed when I finished the race, because we nearly didn't finish the race, and now I try to enjoy the victory and forget everything.
Fernando Alonso became well known for extracting more from the machines he drove than they should possibly have been able to offer. And that's exactly what he did at the 2012 Malaysian Grand Prix, at the wheels of a Ferrari F2012 that struggled to get into the final part of qualifying. A tropical storm loomed over the starting grid as the lights went out. Alonso climbed from 8th to 5th on the first lap.
Decent start from Lewis Hamilton. Michael Schumacher's getting swallowed up a bit there by Mark Webber. Hamilton to the extreme inside of the track. Fernando Alonso's getting caught out and bogged down a bit.
With the rain intensifying, the safety car was soon out. The race restarted nearly an hour later, with drivers on mandated wet tyres. But by the time the green flag was waved, the track was ready for intermediates. Most made the right strategy choice and pitted immediately. Sauber's Sergio Perez and Alonso among them. Perez was having the race of his life and running first, but Alonso used his experience to overtake the Mexican and build up a 6-second lead. As the track dried, Perez charged up behind Alonso, whose tyres were now fading fast. But before the Sauber could attack, Alonso judged the conditions to perfection by coming in again for dry tyres and reopening a 5-second lead by pitting a lap before his rival. The Sauber was much quicker than the Ferrari, and Perez was taking a second per lap out of Alonso's lead. But the Mexican made the mistake Alonso was waiting for, running wide and allowing the Spaniard to build the gap back up again and seal a remarkable victory in a car which had no right to be on the top step of the podium.
This is one of the most beautiful. This is one of the most beautiful. We are so proud of you. So proud of you and of the team.
Alonso arrived at the 2005 San Marino Grand Prix as championship leader, having won 2 of the first 3 Grand Prix for Renault. However, Ferrari was still the favourites at Imola, although Schumacher was only starting 13th after a mistake in qualifying. For the race, Ferrari filled his car with more fuel than any of the other front runners, and he lapped at record speed for several laps longer to brilliantly charge into a podium position. By contrast, Alonso's car was wounded from the start, with his engine down on power. He'd been running second until Kimi Raikkonen retired on lap 9, gifting the lead to Alonso. Thanks to some skillful driving and careful strategy, Alonso kept the lead into the late stages of the race. However, he was being hunted by the best of the best, and Schumacher was relentless, pressing Alonso at every corner, trying to force the young Spaniard into a mistake. But Alonso held his ground against the living legend, on his way to a famous victory. It was the changing of the guard, and the race which proved Alonso was world champion material. Alonso's second victory on home soil didn't come as easy as the first, but was perhaps the finest example in Alonso's career of how his relentless pace and aggression could make the impossible possible. Fifth on the grid, he was soon third after one of his trademark lightning starts, performing two memorable passes around the outside of fellow world champions Kimi Raikkonen and Lewis Hamilton.
Round the outside, there goes Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton wheel to wheel. It's Rosberg from Vettel, and now Alonso slots into third place ahead of Lewis Hamilton, who's lost 2 places by the fourth turn and almost has Kimi Raikkonen all over his rear wing.
Ferrari's strategy that day was key, as they had opted to four-stop once more than any other team was considering. In an era where the perceived wisdom was in tyre preservation, the Scuderia were turning things on their head by doing completely the opposite. But to make the play work, Alonso would have to push like he'd never pushed before, for the whole race, to overcome the time lost in the extra stop. Having undercut Sebastian Vettel on lap 10, he passed Nico Rosberg for the lead as the grandstands embraced him in raptures. He went on to record an emotional 32nd career win in front of his adoring home fans. Although nobody could have imagined it at the time, it would be his final Formula One victory, and unquestionably one of his very best.
You feel the support from everybody. There is every single member of the team taking care of every detail, because we want to do well here in front of our fans, in front of so many people supporting Ferrari.
There's nothing like winning at home. But to do it starting from 11th position and systematically climbing your way up the grid, overtake after overtake, is the stuff of legend. Few would have predicted the result in the early stages as Vettel streaked away from the field from pole position. But in the midfield, Alonso was dominating Valencia's street circuit. He was up to 7th by lap 12, and 2 brutally quick laps before his own pit stop while the leaders in front made theirs promoted him to a virtual 4th behind Vettel, Grosjean and Hamilton. His outstanding performance on track was boosted by several incidents around him. Hamilton's faulty pit stop during the safety car period allowed Alonso to take 3rd place. On the restart, and propelled by the cheering of his fans, he overtook Romain Grosjean for a 2nd place that immediately became the lead when Vettel retired due to an alternator failure. The ovation was now almost deafening. It was Alonso's 29th victory and one that took him back into the championship lead.
In the emotional side, I think this is the best victory, because emotions that I felt in the in-lap or in the podium, I think is nothing to compare.
But most importantly, it was yet again the proof of an extraordinary talent that strengthened against adversity and has written a legacy of racing brilliance that will never be forgotten.